Good evening, Council. This is the continuation of the Council meeting for June 20th, 2022. Before we can start, we need to know who's here. So let's start with the roll call out in Ward 1.
Councillor Hanmer, present.
Councillor Waterloo, present.
Councillor Veith, present.
Councillor Freeman, present.
Councillor Bassick, present.
Mayor Jaworski here.
And the chair is here. Councillor Bonagor isn't able to join us tonight, so this is all of us. With that, I will look again for a disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof, Council. There being only one item on the agenda tonight, I won't wait too long. I will move now on to that one item. Public meetings. There is a formal public meeting tonight, and that means I have a script. So here it goes. This is a formal public meeting to consider zone change application Z-21-10, draft plan of subdivision 30P-21402 from 2854043 Ontario, Inc. for the address 287 to 291 Willett Street. Any persons who want further notice of this application, including the passage of any bylaw, should contact the planner, John Voss, at 519-747-8527 or at john.voss@waterloo.ca, spelled as JOHN.VOS@waterloo.ca. Will the clerk please advise council of the method used to give notice of the meeting and the date notice was given? We will pause so that we can play with our mics.
Notice was advertised in the Kitchener-Waterloo Record on Monday, June 13th, 2022. It was mailed or emailed on Wednesday, June 15th, 2022 to all property owners within 120 meters of the subject property, as well as to public agencies, all persons who signed in or spoke at the informal public meeting held on Monday, October 4th, 2021, and to all persons who requested further notice.
If you would like to speak at this public planning meeting, please call the clerk's office at 519-747-8705 to be added to our short list of delegations. And with that, the planner, John Voss, will now give a brief overview of the application. Over to you, John.
Thank you, Chair Henry. Good evening to members of council, city staff, and the public. Next slide, please. The subject lands are located within the Woolwich Estates neighborhood, fronting onto Woolwich Street and Pelham Street. Each property is currently developed with a single detached dwelling. Next slide, please. This is the proposed draft plan of subdivision. Block 1 is the largest block and is intended for multi-unit residential land uses, and Block 2 will be a single detached dwelling. Pelham Street will extend into the subject lands. Next slide, please. This is the concept plan for the proposed development. 28 townhouse units are proposed fronting on Woolwich Street, and the single detached is fronting onto Pelham Street. Next slide, please. The applicant is also advancing a zone change application. They're proposing to rezone the lands from future determination to residential 8 for the townhouse block, and the single detached dwelling will be zoned residential 4 with site-specific provisions for each. I'll describe those on the following slides. Next slide, please. The residential 8 zone permits townhouse units and is appropriate for the multi-use residential block. The site-specific regulations will allow reduced setbacks in specific yards as noted on the image. and set minimum garage dimensions, which I'll describe on the next slide. Next slide, please. Staff recommend garage dimensions to ensure a vehicle can fit inside the garage, along with storage for recycling bins, bikes, etc. The recommended dimensions are the same as townhouse units in the residential 6 zone, which applies to the Vista Hills neighborhood. Next slide, please. The single detached dwelling will be zoned residential 4 with site-specific regulations, which I'll describe on the next slide. Next slide, please. The proposed dwelling will comply with all of the required setbacks, including the front and flankage yards, but a setback of 5.5 meters is proposed due to the curve of the street. Specific garage dimensions are also recommended for this house in alignment with the R6 zone. Next slide, please. The townhouse development will be subject to site plan control to address detailed design considerations such as building facades, landscaping, and lighting. In addition to the standard urban design requirements, the following items should be thoroughly reviewed. Enhanced building facades at terminus views, enhanced landscaping including larger trees along street frontages and along adjacent properties, and an easement for public access over the private sidewalk connecting Pelham Street with the multi-use path along Woolwich Street. Next slide, please. In conclusion, staff recommend that Council approve zone change application Z2110, adopt the draft plan of subdivision, and provide directions to the Site Plan Review Committee as outlined in the staff report. Now available to respond to any questions that Council might have.
Thank you, John. I will turn to Council to see what questions you have. I see Ward Councillor Vasek. Go ahead.
Thanks through you, Chair Henry. It took me a second to remember that it wasn't Mayor Jaworski there. Thanks, John, for the report and the recommendations. I have a couple of questions. I'm going to start. Actually, Councillor Bonagor sent me a question that she was going to ask, and I think that she asked it in the informal, and I can't recall the answer. And the question is for the that for Block A, where there's 5 lots there. Her question is, did you consider making it 4 so that the setbacks weren't setback changes weren't required, and still it would have been, it seems, consistent with the rest of the blocks along Woolwich anyways?
Sure. Through Councillor Henry to Councillor Vasek to Councillor Bonagor directly. Actually, if we can go to slide number 2 on my presentation. So we did consider the request for the reduced setback along, we're just looking at the aerial photo on the subject lands. Perfect. We did consider the request for 5 lots or 5 units, recognizing that the side yard along the north edge would be reduced from 7.5 meters to 2.4 meters was the request. In consideration, we looked at what's on the adjacent lands, and the townhouse block that's visible on the image there under construction just to the north of the red property line. There's a sufficient setback from the existing townhouses that are proposed. I believe it's upwards of 11 meters between the proposed townhouses on the subject property and the existing townhouses. And so we feel that that aligns with the intent of ensuring separation between buildings on adjacent properties. So although the setback on this specific block of townhouses is being reduced, the overall impact is negligible.
Okay, all right. Yeah, that makes sense. And then I guess the applicant gets another unit, sort of. Is that kind of the idea? It's okay for whoever's going to live there, and then they get another unit too. So the thought is win-win.
Through Councillor Henry, that's correct. There was opportunity to add a bit more density to achieve the permitted densities, and so an extra unit was accommodated.
Well done. That's a very much better answer than my summary was, that it increases density. Well done, John. Okay, That was actually a compliment. I think it sounded like it wasn't a compliment, but
Right,
good
okay,
answer.
good.
Okay. Okay, I have a few questions as well. I just want to ensure the environmental policy comment in the report. It says there's should be no land clearing, earthworks, surfacing works, and tree removal between April 1st and September 1st. So, but if it's approved tonight, presumably the applicant would want to get going with things, and these seem like things that would happen more at the beginning of a development process. So, how how is that possible for them not to get started between April 1st and September 1st? And are there any mediating factors if they wanted to get started that they would have to implement to your satisfaction?
Through Councillor Chair Henry to Councillor Vasic. After tonight, if council approves the application, the draft plan of subdivision needs to go to the region of Waterloo for final approval, which will take some time. After that, it'll have the two agreements with the region and with the city subdivision agreements, which will take some more time to prepare. So tonight's decision won't mean that there's work occurring on the property tomorrow. It's going to take a while. If the developer is in that position where they can actually start development, there is a condition applied or requested that would limit their development between the April to September window, which is a common nesting period for birds especially. And if any work is proposed to start during that period when birds have nested, they would need to hire an arborist to ensure that whatever work is being proposed won't impact any nesting within the lands. If the work is occurring before the migratory birds have arrived and set up nests, then they would be permitted to start. And once work has started, then the likelihood of any impacts occurring has been mitigated at that point. So there are certain controls to ensure that any work that's being done will not have any impact on the nesting season for our birds.
Okay, and then do the birds come back the following year? Like, does it change their migratory patterns afterwards? Or will they come back? How disruptive is it to them after the fact?
I think that's beyond my expertise. I'm not too sure exactly
Right.
what birds do in this area, but my understanding is they find a space. But I really don't know. I can't respond confidently on that one.
That's okay. Is that something you can take away and just look into? I'm just like, if there are any further mitigating or mediating factors you could put into place, should that, go forward before the migratory period and it's deemed okay to do some of the work. Anyways, just maybe a question you can take back and look into for this application, and then maybe so we know in the future too if this were to come up. It sounds like you have lots of mitigating factors in place, but anyways, just curious about that because I know that people in the area here are quite mindful of, as I think the city is, the sensitive lands behind there too.
For sure.
So yeah.
Through
Okay,
Councillor
thanks.
Henry, just to respond to that, it's something we can address when it comes time to do the subdivision agreement to make sure that the conditions that are written do maintain that intent.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. And my last question for you, John, is the residents in the area, some have reached out, and people have been experiencing development there, both on the Kitchener and the Waterloo side, for some time, and so they're no strangers to the construction process. But there have been challenges in the past, and so they've been working with you to address some of these challenges. And I really wanted to just reinforce tonight how the city will consider the existing neighbors through the construction process, with the specific focus on the well running dry and what you'll do there, and making sure that there's no unauthorized dumping and stockpiling at the of excavated soil, rocks, and other debris, and just to be mindful of the excessive dust and noise that has occurred prior. So I just want to reinforce how important that is to the neighbors. They appreciate your work and they just want to really reinforce this message. And I'm just wondering if you could speak a little bit to how you're going to address that as well.
Sure. Through Chair Henry to Councillor Vasic, I've had similar conversations with my colleagues in engineering services about what mitigation measures we can take in to make sure that any previous issues that have occurred with other developments don't further occur with this one. One example would be along a property line when a development comes through, we would require a siltation fence to be put in place to avoid runoff from one property onto the next. But in order to really delineate that property line even more, our new standard more recently is to require a heavy-duty page wire fence in addition to the siltation, which further defines that line so that avoids any grading or dumping of debris from one property to the next. And also recognizing our development manual that's in place does have all of the specific requirements for any developer or builder in terms of managing their property to avoid dust from blowing over. So a property that's not yet ready to be developed, there are certain requirements to have that seeded so that there's vegetation holding the dirt in place, for example. So we do rely on that development manual, and we are aware of some of the potential issues that could arise, and so we have mechanisms in place to prevent those from occurring. And then also to deal with them if they do occur, we have follow-ups just as preventative or proactive measures.
Great, and I know that at least in road constructions, that and city staff are really responsive. But I guess my question will be for the developer as well. But I assume that you are willing and ready to take any calls or challenges to communicate them to the construction site.
Sure, yes, through Councillor Henry, to Councillor Bassick, they can contact the City of Waterloo, specifically the Engineering Services Department that would be reviewing the construction site, but they can contact really anyone at the city and we can make sure that the issues get dealt with. And I'm always available to assist with that.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. That's it for me.
Thank you, Councillor Bassick. Are there any other questions for Mr. Voss from Council? Seeing none, as a reminder, if any person watching would like to receive further notice of this application, you can contact John Voss at 519-747-8527 or at john.voss@waterloo.ca, spelled as JOHN.VOS@waterloo.ca. If you would like to speak at this meeting, please call the clerk's office at 519-747-8705. I will now call upon registered delegations to speak, and that is Francesco Fiorani, planner, I believe representing the applicant. So if we can let the planner in, you have the floor.
Good evening, all. Can you hear me?
Coming through loud and clear.
Excellent. All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Francesco Fiorani from Bruto Planning Consultant Ltd. We are the planning consultants representing the owner of the subject lands this evening. So without further ado, let's get going. Next slide, please. All right. So to the left of you is the official plan figure. The subject lands is zoned low density residential as per the city official plan. It is also designated as low density 10 meters under Schedule B1 height and density. This means that the proposed single family detached dwellings and the townhouse dwellings that are being proposed on the lands are permitted with a maximum height of 10 meters and a maximum density of 150 bedrooms per hectare, which our development meets. The subject property, as John said, has a total area of about 8,500 square meters or 0.855 hectares and currently consists of 2 single detached dwellings. The proposed development, as I mentioned, meets the intent of the city official plan. And I have to say that we have read the staff report, IPPW 2022-033, and we agree with staff's recommendations to approve the zoning and endorse the draft plan application. Next slide, please. So as you can see, a portion of the lands for the 28 townhouses will be rezoned from future determination to residential 8 zone. This will be identical to the townhouse development that was recently built immediately north of the subject site, such it will conform to the character of the area. And the single detached dwelling on the southwest corner of the property will be rezoned to the residential 4th zone, and will be very similar to the single detached subdivision located along Pelham Street in the immediate vicinity. Next slide, please. This is a map of our proposed development. As you can see, the R8 zone will be composed of 28 townhouse dwellings accessed by a private 6-meter road through Woolwich Street. And as John said previously, it'll have a 1.5-meter sidewalk extending from Pelham Street all the way south to Woolwich Street, which will have a public access easement for pedestrians to travel from Pelham Street all the way to Woolwich Street. In the R4 zone, the single detached dwelling is proposed, and it will likely be frozen until the property south of the subject lands eventually develops. Next slide, please. So this is a conceptual rendering of the proposed townhouses. This is not the final design. This is just what was presented as part of the draft plan and zoning applications. We do have a site plan application coming up where, as recommended by the staff report, the architectural materials will be further specified and the townhouse renderings will be improved. Next slide, please. Here's another view of the rear corner of the townhouse units. Again, this is still at a conceptual level and will be further enhanced at the site plan application stage. Next slide, please. Okay, and to conclude, as I said, we read the staff report and we agree with its recommendations to approve the proposed townhouse dwellings and single detached unit, as well as the extension of Pelham Street. We believe our proposed development represents good planning, and as such, we recommend that Council approve the zoning bylaw amendment at 2110 and the draft plan of subdivision 30T 21402. For the following reasons. It conforms to both the Region of Waterloo official plan and the City of Waterloo official plan. There's a similar townhouse development that has been approved immediately north of the subject property. Our proposal does not differ from that recently approved and built development. Our proposal represents efficient use of land of a currently underutilized lot and provides a range of low-density housing types within an established neighborhood. Our proposed townhouses and single detached built form will be well integrated within the surrounding low-density residential character without impact. As previously mentioned, there's already townhouses existing to the north and a single detached residential neighborhood, the Woolwich Estates, to the south and west of the site. As per the staff report, the site plan recommendations will ensure that future development will have regard for enhanced and attractive architectural design, landscape features, buffering, and improved streetscape. As such, the proposed use, we believe, could be accommodated without causing any adverse impacts to the existing infrastructure character and functionality of this area of the City of Waterloo. With that said, that is our presentation, and we look forward to receiving any questions.
Thank you, Francesco. You have questions from Ward Councillor Jen Vassic. Go ahead when you are ready, Councillor Vassic.
Hi, thanks so much for your presentation and for coming tonight. I have just a few questions for you. You said it a few times, and then it's again in your concluding remarks that there's going to be enhanced design architecture. So I think the implication there is that you think the renderings don't look very good. So I'm just curious, what did you have in mind for enhanced architectural design? Like, what can we maybe imagine it's going to look like if it's not going to be the renderings?
As a planner, I can't really speak to specifically which material it would be. I would typically defer that question to the architect. However, I would imagine it would be something that's being used in the immediate vicinity to conform with the neighborhood.
Right. Okay. So it's just the materials, not like the actual design of the building, or when you say enhanced, do you mean materials specifically, not the
Yeah,
actual shape? And
it may be more oriented to materials. I do believe the height and roof type that was proposed was necessary to be able to conform with the height, the 10-meter height, and to be able to have three-story townhouses. So yes, when I speak to the architectural design, I wouldn't necessarily be implying the roof. It would be more the facade materials, the windows, additional landscape features, things like that.
Okay, great. And then I know you're the planner, but I have two other questions. I don't know if there's anyone else here who might be able to speak to this, but I'm just curious about the affordability and affordable conversation that came up in the report, where definitely these are more on the affordability side in that area, providing a bit of a range, a broader range of uh, house costs there for sure. But in the report, it indicated that there wasn't really interest in making it having any more affordable spots there. So I was just curious what was behind that, if you know, or if anyone here does know that, or maybe that's more of a question for John, if there's no one from the applicant side to speak to that.
From our end, I mean, townhouses are more affordable units than single detached dwellings or semi-detached dwellings. But in terms of affordable housing, that will depend on the market and a bunch of factors that at this time are not very clear, including but not limited to construction cost, timing to development. There's still a series of factors that have to be determined.
Okay, all right. Okay, last question. Did you hear my comments from the surrounding neighbors when I was asking John the question?
Yes, it was regarding the bird nesting season and not impacting the neighbors during construction.
Yeah, or just, mitigating the impact. I think they know that there's going to be an impact, but mitigating it because there have been previous challenges. So just curious, I know something that helps with construction, road construction, or things that I've heard from people really appreciating is if the crew on site really knows what's going on and they can just kind of pop over and ask a question, or if there's a point person when there are things going on during the day that they can go to. Do you know if that's going to be possible, or if the applicant has considered how best to communicate with residents during the day?
We have not determined those details yet, Councillor. We still have a site plan application to go through, which will include a range, I imagine, a range of additional studies, probably including a construction management plan, which will include details regarding notifying the residents and keeping the hours of construction to a limited basis to not disturb the surrounding neighborhood.
Okay, so I just want to like give you a suggestion, because what I hear from, that's all great, totally great. But what I hear from people, the projects that go really well is like when the crew is there and there's maybe like one or two crew members who people know they can just be like, hey Joe, hey Sally, this is going on. Do you know what's going on? Where they could just have like they can put a face to a name and they start building a relationship. So the plans are all great, but when it comes down to it, like on site, just having those relationships are really important. So if you can just like have somebody give out their card to people who come and be accessible, that's just going to be a suggestion I leave for you, because I think you want to leave leave the neighborhood with a good feeling about you. So that's a suggestion based on construction projects that I've heard from a lot of residents in the area about what works. So just going to leave that for you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, and absolutely, we are certainly open to all options that will not disturb the neighbors, and you know, we're here with open arms. We welcome any suggestions.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Are there any other questions for Francesco? Seeing none, thank you very much for being with us this evening. I will now check with the clerk to see if we have received any additional delegations. Hearing that we have not, as the clerk informs me there are no further speakers, this formal public meeting is concluded, and the application is now open to council for a motion and debate. I'm looking to council. I see Councillor Vasek will be prepared to move with some fancy Bill 73 wording. Is there someone looking to second? I see the mayor is willing to second that. Councillor Vasek, are you ready to go ahead with the big long words here?
Yeah, I'm going to motion to approve. Is that right?
Yeah, and do you have the Bill 73 wording?
Yep. Okay, whereas council has considered all written and oral submissions from the public and stakeholders, and whereas council has considered the professional opinions of planning staff, therefore be it resolved that council approve IPPW 2022-033, that council approve zoning bylaw amendment Z 21-10 2854043 Ontario Inc. 287 to 291 Woolwich Street as set out in section 7 of IPPW 2022-033. And 3, that council endorse a draft plan of subdivision 30T-21402, 2854043 Ontario Inc. 287 to 291 Woolwich Street as set out in section 7 of IPPW 2022-033. Done.
Thank you. Any comments before I start the vote down in the Gold Coast of Waterloo in Ward 1? Or are you set?
Can I comment?
You can.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is really great for the neighborhood, and I mean, truthfully, I think that I know it's not part of the. Anyways, I think more density is great, more across the whole city, and having the townhouses there is a benefit. It's that area is definitely not very accessible by public transportation, but that's a regional advocacy we need to do. But it has the great multi-use trails that the last council approved, and it's close to Kiwanis Park. The library is over there now, the new library close to Rim Park. Freshco, there's a more affordable grocery store over there. And you know, it's really important that we spread the density, and we're going to need to have more density in more of these neighborhoods. And so I think this is a good, gentle way to do that. And I really appreciate the neighbors who have very legitimate concerns and have been working with the city to mitigate those. And it really sounds like Francesco, that you're willing to work with the neighbors to make it a really positive experience. So yeah, I'm glad to move this, and I know that it can be disruptive, and I know that density brings its own fears of traffic and all that, but we're putting in the traffic calming circles over there. There's the flexible bollards in the spring and fall, and so yeah, so I think this is good news for the city, and I think we likely can expect a little bit more of it, not just in Ward 5 but throughout, so wherever we can, and to meet our climate goals and to meet major housing issues that we have. So yeah, glad to move it, glad it's coming into Ward 5 too, and glad to see it in the rest of the city as well.
Thank you. I don't see any further comments on this item. Anyone looking to comment further? So I will start the vote from Ward 1.
Counselor Hanmer in favor.
Counselor Bodley in favor.
Counselor Veith in favor.
Counselor Freeman in favor.
Counselor Vasek in favor.
Mayor Jaworski in favor.
And the chair is in favor, so that carries. Next, we have consideration of notice of motion. Given a previous meeting, we have none. Notice of motion, I'm aware of none. Communications and correspondence, we have none. Unfinished business, there is none. Questions, council? Are there any questions for staff?
Just Francesco here. Thank you, council and staff, for your support. Have a great evening.
Okay, wasn't exactly what I had in mind, but I'm hearing no questions, and now we have new business from Councillor Freeman. Go ahead, Councillor Freeman.
Thank you through you, Chair Henry. I just wanted to let council know, and I know that I sent an email out on this, but I wanted to bring it up at council, that the Eastside Library was the winner of the Ontario Library Association's new Library Building Award. The award is issued every 3 years, and it is the preeminent building award in the library world. And the award encourages and showcases excellence in the architectural design and planning of libraries in Ontario. There are 2 categories, one for new builds and one for design transformations. So we can look forward to being listed in the Canadian Architecture magazine in coming months. And but definitely wanted to make a shout out to the library and the city staff team that really managed the contract and worked with the library team, and in particular the I guess she's the not the CAO, but she's the assistant, like the executive CAO, or what's the word I'm looking for? Second in command. Laura Dick, she just did an amazing job working with our staff team, and Sunday's team just really blew it out of the park. This is an amazing structure, and I just wanted to say kudos to everyone that was involved in all of this, and well done on the win.
Thank you, Councillor Freeman. That is good news indeed. Any other new business, council? Seeing none, that takes us to enactment of bylaws. And that means we need movers and seconders. Moved by Councillor Freeman, seconded by Councillor Bodley. And we'll start down in Ward 1.
Councillor Hanmer in favor.
Counselor Bodley in favor.
Counselor Veith in favor.
Councillor Freeman in favor.
Counselor Vasek in favor.
Mayor Jaworski in favor.
And the chair is in favor, so those carry. And that takes us to adjournment. Who would like to adjourn? Councillor Vasek would also like to adjourn. Bylaws and adjournment, that's a twofer. Seconded by Councillor Freeman. And we'll head down to the southwest coast of Waterloo to wrap it up. Councillor Hanmer, take us away.
The warm coast of Waterloo. Councillor Hanmer in favor.
Counselor Bodley in favor.
Counselor Veith in favor.
Councillor Freeman in favor.
Counselor Vasek in favor.
Mayor Jaworski in favor.
And the chair is in favor, so we stand adjourned. Enjoy the rest of your evening, council, and we will see you all back next week for a very long time, I'm sure.
Bye, everyone.
Good night, everyone. Good night.